Billionaire boss never noticed the poor maid until the flowers arrived, right before New Year's Eve. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's dive into today's story. Days passed after the brief encounter with Lucas, and Mia's life returned to its usual rhythm. The office was quieter now, with the end of the year approaching and everyone preparing for the holidays. But the flowers, those flowers, kept haunting her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between them, even though Lucas hadn't said a word. She replayed the moment over and over in her mind, wondering if it was all in her head, but a part of her couldn't ignore the fleeting look in his eyes. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. He had noticed her. For the first time in years, Mia wasn't invisible, and that thought made her heart race in a way she wasn't ready to admit. Her mornings were filled with the monotonous tasks of cleaning and organizing, but today felt different. As she passed by Lucas's office, she couldn't help but glance inside, just as she had done countless times before. But today, something was different. Today, Lucas was sitting at his desk, his usual stern expression softened as he looked at a piece of paper. Mia stopped in her tracks. Was this her chance? Should she walk in, pretend to do her usual cleaning routine, or should she just move along, like she always did? She hesitated, standing outside the door, unsure of what to do. She felt like a ghost, a silent observer, waiting for permission to exist in his world. For a brief moment, she wondered if she was only imagining the change between them. Maybe it was just wishful thinking. Maybe Lucas would never see her beyond the maid. But just as she turned to walk away, she heard his voice. "Mia," Lucas called, his tone calm, but carrying an unexpected weight. She froze. Had he really just said her name? She turned slowly, her heart pounding in her chest, afraid that she had misheard. "Yes, Mr. Lucas," she replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Could you come in for a moment?" His words were simple, but they held a command, something she had never heard before. She nodded and stepped inside, her pulse quickening as she approached his desk. She had cleaned his office 100 times, but today, everything felt different. As she stood in front of him, the air between them seemed to crackle with something she couldn't name. Lucas didn't look up at her immediately, his gaze still on the paper in front of him. For a moment, they both stood there in silence, neither knowing exactly what to say. Finally, he looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I've been meaning to talk to you, Mia," he said, his voice low but steady. "About the flowers." The words hit her like a wave. The flowers. The very same flowers she had been thinking about constantly. She felt a flush creep up her neck, her heart suddenly in her throat. Was he really talking about the flowers? "I wanted to thank you," he continued, his tone more genuine than she had ever heard. "I know you didn't have to bring them to my office, but you did, and I appreciate it." Mia was stunned. She had only done her job, nothing more. She hadn't even thought that Lucas would ever acknowledge such a small thing. "It was my pleasure, Mr. Lucas," she replied, trying to keep her voice from shaking. She didn't know what else to say. The entire situation felt surreal. Lucas looked at her for a long moment, his gaze intense, as if he were trying to understand something about her. For a brief moment, the world outside seemed to disappear. It was just the two of them in this space, suspended in time. And then, just as quickly as it had started, the moment ended. Lucas turned his attention back to the papers on his desk, the brief connection they had shared dissipating into the air. "You can go now, Mia," he said, his voice returning to its usual detached tone. She nodded quickly, unsure of what had just happened. As she turned to leave, her mind raced. What had that moment meant? Was it just a polite thank you? Or was there something more? She couldn't decide, but one thing was certain. She couldn't stop thinking about it. For the first time, Lucas had acknowledged her, seen her as more than just a maid. And that realization left her with a strange, unfamiliar feeling. She walked back to her small office, the weight of the encounter still heavy on her chest. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and excitement. What was going on? Was this the beginning of something new? Or was it just another fleeting moment, soon to be forgotten? As she sat down at her desk, the hum of the office around her seemed distant, as if she were in a dream. She couldn't focus on her work. All she could think about was Lucas, his words, his gaze, and the flowers. Would this be the turning point in her life? Or would it all fade away, just like every other day? Mia didn't know the answer, but as she glanced back at the office door, she couldn't shake the feeling that her world was about to change, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. The following week, things between Mia and Lucas remained strangely quiet. There was an unspoken tension hanging in the air, but neither of them addressed it directly. Mia went about her usual tasks, cleaning, organizing, always careful to stay out of his way, yet she couldn't shake the memory of their brief interaction. Every time she saw Lucas, she found herself wondering if he had truly meant what he said, or if it had just been a momentary kindness that he would soon forget. But she couldn't stop thinking about it. The flowers, his gaze, the way he had looked at her, even if just for a brief second. It was as though something had shifted in the dynamic between them. Mia couldn't deny that she was feeling something she hadn't felt before. Was it hope? Or was it just the fleeting fantasy of someone who had always been invisible, now briefly seen? Lucas, on the other hand, seemed to be as aloof as ever. He was still the same billionaire CEO, distant, focused solely on his work. But Mia noticed the subtle changes. His eyes would sometimes linger on her a little longer than necessary. A slight, almost imperceptible smile would tug at the corner of his lips when he saw her pass by. It wasn't much, but to Mia, it was everything. But despite these small gestures, the distance between them remained. She was still the maid, and he was still the boss. And she knew that the reality of their positions couldn't be ignored. But there was one thing Mia couldn't ignore. It was the growing tension between them, the feeling that something was about to happen. She felt like she was on the edge of something, a precipice she couldn't see but could feel underfoot. It was that feeling that kept her awake at night, wondering what it all meant. And then, everything changed. It was a typical day, just like any other, when Mia was called into Lucas's office once again. This time, however, there was no small talk, no polite thank you for the flowers. Lucas looked up at her, his expression serious. "Mia, sit down," he said, his tone commanding, though there was something else in it, something softer, almost vulnerable. Mia hesitated for a moment before doing as she was told. She sat in the chair across from him, her heart pounding in her chest. She couldn't understand what was happening. "I've been thinking about our conversation the other day," Lucas began, his voice quieter now, more introspective. "I wanted to apologize." Mia blinked, confused. "Apologize? For what?" "For not acknowledging you sooner," he continued, his eyes meeting hers. "I realize that I've been blind to the people around me, to you. And that's not fair. You're not just a maid, Mia. You've always been more than that." Mia's breath caught in her throat. His words were unexpected, far from the cold, indifferent Lucas she had come to know. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. She couldn't process what he was saying. Was this some kind of joke? Or was it real? Lucas leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I know this might seem strange, but I want to get to know you better," he said, his voice low and steady. "I don't want to keep pretending that I don't see you. I've spent far too long ignoring the people around me, and I've realized that it's not the way I want to live anymore." Mia felt her pulse quicken, her mind racing. Could this really be happening? Was Lucas really saying what she thought he was saying? Could the walls between them finally be coming down? But before she could respond, there was a knock at the door. The moment was broken. Lucas's attention shifted, and Mia's heart sank. She knew she couldn't be the one to disrupt his life. She was still the maid, still the one who had no right to be a part of his world. As Lucas stood to answer the door, Mia quickly rose to leave. But as she turned to walk away, she heard his voice again. "Mia." She froze. "Stay." The command was clear, but there was something more behind it, something that made her hesitate. She turned back to face him, and in that instant, she saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't just asking her to stay. He was inviting her into his world. It was a bold step, one that neither of them had ever taken before. And Mia, despite her doubts, despite the deep fear in her heart, found herself unable to walk away. For the first time, she realized that there was a chance, a real chance, for something more between them. The distance that had always existed between them was slowly starting to fade, replaced by something more dangerous, more thrilling. It was the beginning of something neither of them had expected, and Mia's heart was racing with anticipation and fear. Was this the moment her life would change forever? Or would it all fall apart before it could even begin? Days passed, but Mia couldn't shake the memory of Lucas's words. His invitation to stay, the look in his eyes, it all felt like something she couldn't ignore. Every time she walked past his office, she felt her heart race. The small gestures, the subtle changes, they were all there. And yet, she wasn't sure what any of it meant. Was it truly a shift in their relationship? Or was she just fooling herself, hoping for something that wasn't really there? It was clear that Lucas was different now, but Mia couldn't help but question if he truly saw her as something more, or if this was just his way of appeasing a staff member. She found herself torn between the fear of getting too close and the undeniable pull she felt toward him. The tension was suffocating. Yet, even as she struggled with these thoughts, something inside her told her she couldn't back away now. One evening, as the office was beginning to empty for the holidays, Lucas called her into his office once more. The Christmas decorations were already up, twinkling lights lining the walls, but the festive cheer seemed far removed from what was about to happen. Mia walked into the room, her heart pounding. Lucas was seated at his desk, the usual cold professionalism in his posture, but this time, there was something else, a strange quiet that felt different from anything she had experienced with him before. "Mia," Lucas said, his voice soft but firm, "I need to talk to you." His eyes locked with hers, and for a brief moment, she saw something there, an openness, a vulnerability, something she had never seen before. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes, Mr. Lucas?" she asked, her voice betraying the nerves that twisted in her stomach. "I've been thinking a lot," he began, running a hand through his hair in frustration. "About us. About the way I've treated you. I've realized I've been unfair to you, and I don't want to keep things this way. You're not just some maid in my company, Mia. You've never been just that." The words hit her like a punch to the chest. She had never expected this. Not from someone like Lucas, someone so powerful, so unreachable. She swallowed hard, trying to process what he was saying. Was he really saying that? Was he apologizing? For a moment, she couldn't speak. She could only stare at him, her heart racing. "I don't know what's happening between us, but I want to find out," Lucas continued, his tone low, almost vulnerable. "I don't know if this is right, but I can't stop thinking about you." Mia's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to say something, to respond, but words failed her. All she could do was stand there, frozen in place, as Lucas stood up and walked toward her. He was so close now, too close for her to think clearly, but the chemistry between them was undeniable. "I don't want this to be a mistake," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I think it's already too late." His hand gently touched her arm, sending a spark of electricity through her body. Mia felt a shiver run down her spine. She was torn, uncertain, but the pull she felt toward him was stronger than anything she had ever felt. The line between what was professional and personal was blurring, and she wasn't sure how to stop it. "Mia," Lucas whispered again, his voice full of emotion, "I don't want you to feel like you're beneath me. You're not. You're more than that." The words sent a rush of warmth through her chest, but she knew that whatever was happening between them, it couldn't be simple. The power imbalance, the difference in their lives, it was all still there, hanging over them. But in that moment, as Lucas's gaze lingered on her, Mia knew that things were about to change, whether she was ready or not. "I don't know if I can do this," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can trust this. It feels too dangerous." Lucas stepped back slightly, giving her space, but the intensity in his eyes remained. "I understand," he said softly. "But I won't stop trying, Mia. I won't give up on us." The words echoed in her mind long after she left his office that evening. The questions, the doubts, they swirled in her head, but one thing was clear. Lucas wasn't going to let this go. And neither was she. Despite all the reasons she should pull away, despite the risk of it all, Mia couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to make this work. But at what cost? That was the question she didn't have an answer for. As she walked back to her small, empty office, the weight of the moment settled on her shoulders. Was she ready to step into this world with Lucas? Or would it all fall apart before they even had a chance? The uncertainty gnawed at her, but for the first time in her life, Mia felt something she hadn't allowed herself to feel before, the possibility of a future she never thought possible. And as the year came to a close, Mia knew that the next chapter of her life was about to begin. But the question remained, would it be a happy ending, or would this story end in heartbreak? Only time would tell. I apologize for the confusion in the previous chapters. Mia had found herself standing at the edge of a precipice, her heart torn between what was familiar and what could be. Lucas's words still echoed in her mind, his promise to not give up on them. But every step she took toward him felt like a step into unknown territory. It was hard to keep her thoughts straight. On one hand, she was the maid in his world, and on the other, Lucas had begun to make her feel as though she belonged there, as if her existence mattered to him in a way that was more than just professional. The quiet whispers of hope lingered in the corners of her mind, but so did the shadows of fear and uncertainty. What if this was all just a fleeting moment for Lucas? What if he woke up tomorrow and everything went back to the way it had always been? What if she wasn't enough to bridge the gap between their worlds? These questions played in her head as she tried to focus on her work, but each task seemed more meaningless than the last. It wasn't that she hated her job, it was just that everything had changed. What had once been routine now felt suffocating, as though she couldn't escape the pull of the unknown. She didn't know how to keep her distance from Lucas, especially when he had made it clear that he was ready to step beyond the boundaries that had defined their relationship for so long. But could she trust it? Could she trust him? The following week, Lucas called her into his office again, and this time, Mia's heart raced with anticipation. The weight of the moment hung heavy in the air, and she couldn't decide if she was dreading or craving the conversation that awaited her. When she walked into the room, Lucas was already standing, looking out the window with his back to her. The sight of him like this, distant, almost unreachable, sent a ripple of nervous energy through her. But when he turned to face her, his expression was softer than she had ever seen it. "Mia," he began, his voice steady but carrying a hint of something she hadn't heard before. "I need to be honest with you." Her heart skipped a beat. She felt the words weigh down on her even before he spoke them. She could feel the tension in her chest tighten, but at the same time, her curiosity burned. "About what?" she asked, her voice betraying her unease. "About us," Lucas replied. He paused, as though choosing his words carefully. "I've been thinking a lot about what I said before, about how I've been unfair to you." He took a step toward her, his gaze not leaving hers. "Mia, I've been living in this bubble for so long, surrounded by people I can't truly connect with. But with you, I don't know what this is, but it's real. I can't keep pretending that it's not." Mia's pulse quickened. What was he saying? Was he finally admitting what she had suspected all along? That there was something between them? Her mind raced, and she opened her mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. "I want you to know, Mia," Lucas continued, his voice almost a whisper now, "that I see you. I see who you are, beyond just a maid. I see the woman standing in front of me, the one who deserves more than just a passing glance. I want you to be a part of my life, not as an employee, but as someone who means something to me." The silence between them was deafening, the air charged with an energy that made it hard to breathe. Mia couldn't move, couldn't speak. She had never expected this. Not from Lucas, not from the man who had always been so distant, so closed off. But here he was, pouring his heart out in a way she hadn't thought possible. Could this really be happening? Was Lucas, the billionaire CEO, actually seeing her for the first time, not as someone beneath him, but as an equal? "Mia," Lucas said again, his voice gentle, "I want to be with you. Not just because you're beautiful, but because you've changed the way I see things. You've made me realize that there's more to life than just work and money." Mia's heart was pounding in her chest, the weight of his words sinking deep into her soul. She had spent so long convincing herself that a relationship with someone like Lucas was impossible, that their worlds were too different, too far apart. But here he was, making it seem like there was a chance, a real chance, for them to be together. But even as hope flickered in her chest, doubt lingered. Could this really work? Was Lucas truly ready to step into a world so different from his own? Was she ready to face the consequences of this change? "Lucas," Mia said finally, her voice trembling, "I don't know if I can believe this. I don't know if I can trust that this won't end in heartbreak." Lucas took a step closer to her, his eyes never leaving hers. "I can't promise that it will be easy, Mia," he said quietly. "But I can promise that I won't walk away. Not this time." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their meaning. And for the first time, Mia allowed herself to hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this time, things would be different. But the uncertainty still gnawed at her, and the question remained. Was this the beginning of something real, or was it just another dream that would fade before it could take root? I apologize, but Mia couldn't stop thinking about Lucas's words. Every moment since that conversation had been filled with a constant whirlwind of emotions. His confession, his promise, lingered in the air, hanging between them, unspoken yet undeniable. But the reality of their situation, the distance between them, was never far from Mia's mind. She was still the maid, still the one in the background, while Lucas was the CEO, the billionaire. The gap between their worlds was vast, and she couldn't help but wonder if it would ever truly be possible to bridge that gap. Was she just dreaming of something that could never be? But the way Lucas looked at her, the way he spoke to her, it made her feel seen, truly seen. And for someone who had spent her entire life feeling invisible, that was more than she ever expected. Yet, doubt crept in. Was this real? Could Lucas truly mean what he said? Could he be ready to give up his world, his power, for her? Mia didn't know. The uncertainty gnawed at her, but the longing in her chest, the hope she had never dared to entertain before, refused to let her walk away. It was the day before New Year's Eve, and the office was quiet, the calm before the storm. The decorations were all up, the twinkling lights casting a soft glow around the room. Mia was busy with her usual tasks, trying to keep her mind occupied, but all she could think about was Lucas. She could feel his presence even when he wasn't near, as if his words, his promises, had a weight that wouldn't let go. She had spent hours replaying that moment in her mind, the one where he had told her he saw her, not just as an employee, but as someone who meant something to him. It felt unreal, like a dream she didn't want to wake from. But dreams had a way of fading, didn't they? Lucas had promised he wouldn't walk away, but Mia knew that promises could be broken. She had seen it before in her life, the way people would come and go, the way things would shift and change. Would Lucas be any different? As she was dusting the corner of the office, the door to the hallway opened, and Mia froze. She could hear his footsteps before she saw him. Lucas. She didn't need to turn around to know it was him. The sound of his presence was enough to make her heart race. Slowly, she turned, and there he was, standing in the doorway, his dark eyes focused on her. He didn't speak at first, just watched her for a moment, and in that silence, Mia felt the weight of everything. The uncertainty, the hope, the fear. It was all there, swirling between them. Finally, Lucas broke the silence. "Mia," he said softly, his voice more gentle than she had ever heard. "Can we talk?" She nodded, her throat suddenly dry. She wanted to say something, to ask him what he truly wanted, but the words caught in her throat. What was there to say? What was she supposed to say to him? "I've been thinking," Lucas continued, stepping closer. "About everything. About us." He paused for a moment, his gaze never leaving hers. "I know I've asked a lot of you. I know that this, whatever it is between us, isn't easy. But I don't want to keep running away from it. I don't want to pretend that nothing's happening. I don't want to lose you." Mia's breath caught in her chest. His words hit her like a wave, drowning her in everything she had been trying to ignore. "Lucas," she started to speak, but he stopped her with a raised hand. "I know," he said softly, "that this isn't the right time, that there are too many things we both need to figure out. But I can't keep pretending that this doesn't matter to me." He stepped even closer now, his presence filling the space between them. "I'm not asking you to make a decision today, Mia. I'm not asking you to throw away your life for me. I'm just asking that you let me be a part of it. Let me prove that I'm worth it." Her heart was pounding in her chest, her mind racing. Was this really happening? Was Lucas, the man who had always been so distant, so untouchable, really asking her to let him into her life? Could she? Could she really take that step? "I don't know if I'm ready," Mia whispered, her voice barely audible. She felt the weight of the decision pressing on her, the fear of what would happen if she said yes, but also the fear of what would happen if she said no. "I don't know if I can trust this. I don't know if I can trust you." Lucas's face softened, and for the first time, Mia saw the vulnerability behind his eyes. "I understand," he said, his voice low and sincere. "But I can't give up on this. I won't give up on you. Not now. Not ever." There was a long silence between them, filled with unspoken words, but for the first time, Mia felt the walls that had always been between them start to crumble. She didn't know what the future held, but in that moment, she realized that she couldn't keep running from it. She couldn't keep pretending that she didn't want this. And maybe, just maybe, neither did he. The uncertainty was still there, gnawing at her, but for the first time, Mia allowed herself to feel something else, hope. The kind of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't alone in this. The kind of hope that made her believe that Lucas might just be telling the truth. And that was the first step toward everything changing. I apologize for the confusion, but as Mia stood there, feeling the weight of Lucas's words hanging between them, something inside her began to shift. The uncertainty that had clouded her heart for weeks was slowly starting to fade, replaced by something she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years, hope. But with that hope came fear, fear of the unknown, fear of stepping into a world that felt so far beyond her reach. Could she really allow herself to believe in this? Could she trust that Lucas's feelings were genuine, or was she simply holding on to a dream? As the days passed, Mia couldn't shake the image of Lucas's face, the way his eyes had softened, the sincerity in his voice. She had never seen him like that before, and it made her wonder if everything she had convinced herself to be true about him, about their relationship, was wrong. Maybe it was possible for them to be something more. Maybe, just maybe, their worlds weren't as different as she had thought. But even with these new thoughts swirling in her mind, Mia remained hesitant. She couldn't ignore the reality of their situation. She was still a maid in his company, and he was still the CEO. The gulf between their lives hadn't disappeared overnight, no matter how much she wanted it to. It was always there, lurking in the background, a reminder that no matter how much they cared for each other, there would always be obstacles, always be judgment, always be consequences. But what if they could overcome them? What if they could make it work? The question gnawed at her, and as much as she tried to push it aside, it refused to leave her. One evening, as she was finishing her duties for the day, Lucas called her into his office again. This time, there was something different in the air, something electric. When Mia entered, he was standing by the window, his back to her, but when he turned, there was a look in his eyes that stopped her heart. It was a look she hadn't seen before, vulnerable, uncertain, but filled with something she couldn't quite name. "Mia," he said softly, his voice barely a whisper. "I know I've been asking a lot from you. I know that this, whatever this is between us, isn't easy. But I need you to know something." She stepped into the room, her heart racing, unsure of where this conversation was heading. "I can't promise that it's going to be perfect," he continued, his eyes not leaving hers. "I can't promise that it won't be hard, but I can promise that I'm willing to try. For you. For us." His words were simple, but they carried so much weight. Mia felt the lump in her throat grow, and for a moment, she was at a loss for words. Could she really take that step? Could she really risk everything for a chance at something that could end in heartbreak? "Lucas, she began, but he held up a hand, silencing her. "I know what you're thinking," he said, taking a step closer. "You're afraid. I can see it in your eyes. But Mia, I'm not asking you to throw your life away. I'm asking you to give me a chance. Give us a chance." The silence between them stretched, heavy and thick. Mia could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on her, but at the same time, she could feel something else, something warm and powerful. It was the pull between them, the connection that had always been there, even when they hadn't acknowledged it. "I don't want to make this harder for you," Lucas said, his voice gentle now. "But I want you to know that I don't want anyone else. I want you, Mia, and I don't want to wait any longer to make that clear." Mia's breath hitched in her chest. The intensity in his voice, the sincerity in his eyes, it was too much to ignore. She had spent so long convincing herself that this wasn't possible, that someone like Lucas could never truly want someone like her. But in that moment, she realized that maybe she had been wrong. Maybe there was more to this than just a fleeting desire. Maybe there was something real between them. But the question still lingered. Was she ready for this? Was she ready to let go of her fears and embrace the unknown? "I don't know if I'm ready, Lucas," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "But maybe I'm willing to try. Maybe we can see where this goes." Lucas's face softened, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled. It was small, but it was real. "That's all I'm asking for," he said, his voice full of relief. "Just a chance. That's all I need." The moment was a turning point. And as Mia stood there, feeling the warmth of his words wash over her, she realized that this was the beginning of something she hadn't dared to dream about before. The walls that had once kept them apart were starting to crumble, and in their place, there was the possibility of something real, something beautiful. But the journey ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, doubts, and obstacles to face. But for the first time, Mia felt ready to take that step. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't going to run anymore. I apologize, but as Mia stood in the quiet of the office, her heart felt heavier than ever. Lucas had given her a chance, an opportunity to take a step towards something real, something beyond the walls that had always separated them. But as much as she wanted to believe in this, doubt still lingered. She had never allowed herself to dream this big before, and now that the chance was in front of her, the reality of it felt daunting. The moments between them had always been filled with tension, but this was different. It wasn't just the weight of their positions anymore. It was the weight of their emotions, their desires, and the very real possibility that things could either fall apart or change everything. The uncertainty gnawed at her. What if they tried, only to realize that their worlds truly were too different? What if the distance that separated them, not just in terms of money and power, but in everything they had known, was too vast to overcome? Her mind raced with these questions, but despite her fears, something else pushed her forward: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, Lucas wasn't like everyone else who had come and gone in her life. Maybe this time, there would be something real, something worth fighting for. The days after that conversation felt like a blur. Every time Mia saw Lucas, the connection between them grew stronger, the invisible pull more intense. But with every step forward, there was still that lingering doubt, the fear that it could all come crashing down. There were moments when she caught him looking at her with a tenderness that she had never seen before. His eyes, once cold and distant, now seemed to soften when they met hers. But in the same breath, there were moments of hesitation, moments when the walls between them seemed to rise again, when the reality of their situation came rushing back into focus. Could they truly make this work? Could she trust him? Could he trust her? The questions haunted her, and as much as she tried to push them away, they refused to be ignored. One evening, as the office emptied for the night, Lucas stopped her before she could leave. She had just finished her cleaning duties and was on her way out, eager to escape the weight of her thoughts. But Lucas had other plans. He was standing by the elevator, waiting for her. The look in his eyes was unreadable, and for a moment, Mia felt a wave of nervous energy wash over her. "Mia," he said quietly, his voice carrying a mixture of determination and uncertainty, "I need to talk to you." She stopped, her heart pounding. The moment she had been dreading, and secretly hoping for, was finally here. "Yes, Mr. Lucas?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, though her nerves betrayed her. "I know I've said a lot of things, and I know we've both been trying to figure this out," he began, taking a step toward her. "But I don't want to keep pretending. I don't want to hold back anymore." Mia felt her breath catch in her throat. What was he saying? Was this it? Was he finally going to make a decision, a choice, about them? "Mia," Lucas said again, his eyes locking with hers, "I want you. I've wanted you for a long time, and I can't keep ignoring it. I don't care about the difference in our worlds. I don't care about the expectations. All I care about is you." His words hit her like a rush of adrenaline. Everything she had been feeling, everything she had been afraid of, seemed to come to a head in that moment. She stood there, frozen, unsure of what to say. Was this really happening? Was he really asking for this? For them? "Lucas," she whispered, her voice trembling, I don't know if I can believe you. I don't know if I can trust this." The fear was there, thick in her chest, but there was something else too. Something that refused to be ignored. "Mia, I'm not asking you to trust me immediately," Lucas said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not asking for everything to be perfect right away. I just want you to give me a chance. Give us a chance. Can you do that?" His words were simple, but they carried a weight that made her heart ache. Mia felt a flood of emotions surge within her. The fear, the hope, the uncertainty, it was all so overwhelming. She had spent so long convincing herself that something like this could never happen for her, that someone like Lucas could never want someone like her. But here he was, asking for everything she had feared and longed for all at once. "I want to try," Mia said finally, her voice shaking. I want to believe in this, in us. But I'm scared. Lucas stepped closer, his hand gently reaching for hers. I know you're scared, he said softly. And I'm scared too. But I believe in us. I believe in you. The words were simple, but they were everything. Mia's heart fluttered in her chest as she took a step closer to him, the walls between them feeling smaller than ever. In that moment, she realized that no matter the uncertainty, no matter the obstacles, this was what she wanted. And for the first time, it felt like it might just be possible. Together, they could navigate this unknown path. Together, they could make it work. And as Mia looked up at Lucas, she knew that this was only the beginning. The beginning of something that neither of them could have predicted, but something that could change everything. I apologize, but as the days passed after that pivotal moment, Mia's life began to shift in ways she hadn't imagined. The fear that had once gripped her heart slowly began to fade, replaced with a quiet certainty that things between her and Lucas were real, and not just a fleeting fantasy. Yet, as the uncertainty faded, the reality of their relationship brought with it new challenges. The tension that had always been there, the gap between their worlds, wasn't something that could be ignored forever. They had taken a step toward each other, but they both knew it wasn't going to be easy. The whispers of their office, the judgment of their colleagues, the silent, unspoken barriers, they were all still there, waiting to rear their heads. Mia found herself walking a tightrope between her old life and the new one that Lucas was offering her. The new world that seemed so glamorous, so full of possibilities, was still foreign to her. She wasn't sure if she was ready to leave everything behind for this. But as she looked at Lucas, she realized that the choice she faced wasn't really about leaving her past behind. It was about choosing a future she could no longer deny. The days seemed to fly by, and with each passing moment, Mia felt herself drawn deeper into Lucas's world. But it wasn't just his world that was changing, she was changing too. With every small gesture, every word of encouragement from him, she found herself growing stronger, more confident. She had always lived in the shadows, but now, she could finally see the light. One evening, after a long day of work, Mia stood outside Lucas's office, staring at the door. She knew he was in there, waiting for her. For a moment, she hesitated, unsure if she was ready to take the next step. But when she opened the door, and Lucas looked up at her with that familiar warmth in his eyes, she knew there was no turning back. He stood up from his desk and walked toward her, his presence overwhelming but comforting. Mia, he said, his voice low, I need to tell you something. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what he was about to say, but she knew that it was going to be something important. I know this has been hard for both of us, he continued, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Mia looked up at him, her eyes full of doubt, but also full of hope. I know it won't be easy, he said, but I want to be with you, Mia, and I'm willing to fight for us, no matter what. The words hit her like a tidal wave, sweeping away every ounce of doubt she had left. For the first time, she felt as if they were truly on the same page. For the first time, she believed that maybe, just maybe, this could work. The world they were building together was uncertain, full of challenges, but it was theirs. And that was enough. Mia stepped forward, closing the distance between them, and for the first time, she let herself feel what she had been too afraid to feel for so long, love. She didn't know what the future held, but as she stood there in Lucas's arms, she realized that the only thing that mattered was the present. For the first time in her life, she was exactly where she was meant to be, and maybe that was all that mattered. As they stood together, the weight of the world seemed to lift, replaced by a quiet promise. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be times when they'd face obstacles, when doubts would creep in, but together, they could face anything. They were no longer just the maid and the CEO. They were two people, ready to build a future together, ready to take on whatever life had in store. The road ahead would be long, but Mia was no longer afraid. She was ready to walk it, hand in hand with the man who had shown her that sometimes, love was worth fighting for. As the days passed, their bond grew stronger. The world outside still had its judgments, still had its whispers, but inside, they were no longer bound by the expectations of others. They were free to write their own story. And as Mia stood beside Lucas, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, she realized that the greatest lesson of all was that love, real love, was never easy. but it was always worth it. And sometimes, the hardest paths led to the most beautiful destinations. If you've enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments below. What did you think of Mia and Lucas's journey? Do you believe love can conquer all? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more emotional and inspiring stories just like this one. Your support means the world to us. Thank you for being part of our journey.